And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is two of my good brothers here in the temple. First off, making his return to the valley after what, 2 years, 3 years? Uh, the one and only good brother Monarch, who is
I don't think
still.
it's been 2 years, has it?
I'm pretty sure it's been at least a year.
I think it's been closer to a year. I could be wrong here, though.
Oh,
All
who
time blends together for me these days.
Well, that's going to happen when you're cosplaying as a Final Destination protagonist, uh, as well as cursing everyone with the knowledge that Beaver Dick Park exists. Then again, the CEO of Hasbro is named Chris Cox, which
Oddly fitting.
yeah. Oh, and of of course with a name like that, I'm like, you got into the wrong field. You should be walking the carpet at the AVN Awards. But and of course we have the man who is the most consistently late and fig, and the man who is forced to suffer being a sports fan in Washington. Oh, good brother Doku.
Hey, for once I'm on time.
Mm-hmm. For once you are early and straight.
It's not gonna help with the whole Washington sports team situation, though.
No. Oh. I've already had to deal with my Wild making an exit, but at least they managed to win a playoff series for the first time in 11 years.
I mean, if you're gonna have to make an exit, that's definitely the way you want to do it.
And it was a win over Dallas, which is extra special for those of us in Minnesota.
Oh, that's even better. So not only am I a Redskins fan, and screw you, it's not the Commanders. It will and always will be the Redskins. I like my representation, damn it.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I used to live in Houston, so I'm a Texans fan as well. So I have two reasons to not like Dallas.
Yeah.
It only matters to me because I had a coworker who's a really big Cowboys fan, so it's something I can make fun of him for.
Yeah. It's one of those evergreen jokes because, well, until Jerry Jones kicks the bucket, they're never going to improve. And
Also, we were both wrong, Mildred. It was 8 months ago we finished Daggerheart, so less than a year.
that is fair, and you know, it's looking at Daggerheart in hindsight. It is funny that when a lot of these D&D alternatives started cropping up in the last 3 years, that I saw a bunch of people saying that they were all doomed because they wouldn't be able to shake people off D&D, and yet one of Wizard of the Coast's big lifers during the 5th edition life cycle jumped ship about a month ago, and I've been getting reports from a few retailers as well as the UK side of Amazon that they're having trouble keeping up stock. Like in some places, the what they have as far as the core book is in the single digits, and even
I
then,
think there's a term for that. Hubris.
mm-hmm.
Never fall to hubris. It will come back to bite you. Just give it enough time.
Well, it's the reason why. Look, every sport has one team or group that is my whipping boy, and as much as I have some issues with Stephen A. Smith, he was right on one thing. Just wait, be patient. The Cowboys will let you down. Oh, And
Yeah, he's not wrong.
uh, and this, I'd say the same thing with the Leafs, but this year this feels less like a collapse and more like just a systematic breaking. Like, I feel like calling what happened with the Leafs this year a collapse is kind of underselling it.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't been following them too much, but I will say there definitely is a difference between the team aging and having to bring a new talent and get them up to speed versus having an absolute gutting. And from what I've heard, at least, it sounds like the Leafs got an absolute gutting.
Oh, I will simply state that the big core four that they signed to ridiculous contracts before the pandemic, one of them's gone. He's gone to he went to Vegas, and the others are either getting up there in years in one case, or have one foot out the door.
Yeah, that's not a good spot to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one or two going is one thing. One person leaves, maybe a contract comes up, one guy is getting old and is going to step out. Those are things you can kind of plan for and sort of work around. But if that all hits you at once, that's rough.
As well as a few other things that just demonstrated a lack of team culture in the name of saving money. Like, they canceled the dad's outing. Something every team does.
That's a dumb decision. That's a really dumb decision. Yeah. Why on earth would you do that?
For context, Monarch, every team has the outing vacation that they do sometimes during the off season or the All-Star break. And players are allowed to bring their dads with them as a team bonding thing. And every team does this. It's mainly as a way to build camaraderie with players.
Oh, but you said they got rid of that as a way to save money. How does that save them money? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what?
Because they're not flying a bunch of extra people in. They hurriedly replaced it with a bring a mentor thing, and most didn't because it was way too late.
Well, and also that's just lame. Mm. like I'm sorry, okay, bring a mentor. What? You mean my dad?
Yeah, it was clearly done as a hurried thing because they realized how deep they stepped in it. But
yeah, that is just a really stupid decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing you don't want to do, and this is not in just regards to sports, but this is kind of across the board type of thing. If you foster a quote culture where people just view this as like, oh, well, it's just a job, it's just a paycheck, bro, you've already lost.
Yeah. And on the other hand, things could be worse. You could try and do the pregame meal that Eric Carlson does. I don't know how he does it, and he doesn't know either. Have you seen what he eat his pregame thing that he's been doing? I saw SPDN try and do it, and they couldn't do it.
I heard somebody mention it, but I don't know the details.
So it is a full-on chicken breast with ranch, along with spaghetti, meat sauce, and raw onion that you muck together.
Okay.
I think the reason he keeps doing it is, have you ever heard that expression, there are no atheists in foxholes?
Yes. I come from a military family. I've heard that one I've heard that one a lot.
Mm-hmm. And yes, Donman, there is a fan translation of the Wizardry TTRPG, which we should get to that. we will get to that, but I want to cover Crystania first. So
I just have to ask real quick before you do hop into the meat and pun intended meat and potatoes of the show.
Mhm.
A chicken breast with ranch sauce with spaghetti bolognese and raw onions.
yep.
That's horrifying.
I don't know what to say to that. I'm fascinated, confused, and disgusted all at the same time. If it was just the chicken breast with ranch sauce and spaghetti bolognese, that'd be fine. But why the raw onions?
Not even gonna bother to grill the onions at all? Nothing? Just throwing them right on top?
Hey, you're not gonna caramelize them? Maybe give them a little bit of a char? Like, no, just raw onions? Like, just... Oh, okay, each their own, I guess.
When he was asked, does this help you play better on the ice? He's like, probably not, but I've done it for 10 years.
You know what? Screw it. It sounds disgusting, but respect.
Yeah. So, at least he admits that it probably isn't good for him.
Like I said, respect. He's not even trying to pretend like, oh yeah, the raw onions actually give me this. No, he's like, nope. It's what I do.
Oh yeah. So
that is such a weird combo.
Yeah,
Wait, does he put any cheese on it?
No.
Oh, thank God.
What I told you is in there. That
diabolical.
What I told you is in there. That is it. But
I mean, I guess it could be worse.
Mm-hmm. But with that said, so obviously both of these projects are fan translations, and I ended up finding these on accident. Well, not the latter. I found on accident. The former was thanks to the folks at the Sword World translation team. But the first one we have, Crystania, is... I know that some will bring up the OVA and how Ashram and Piratus show up in that particular thing, but in terms of the light novels, which this is going to be more based on, they don't appear.
Isn't it mostly just they kind of share the world, much like how this technically happens in the same world as Louis the Rune Knight or Rune Soldier?
Not really.
No, not even that?
No, and keep in mind, I've told you this before, but Lodos being in the Sword World universe didn't happen until 97. The main thing that Crystania, Sword World, and Lodos have in common is Rio Mizuno. This is built on a completely different set of replays that Mizuno was doing. And there isn't the same set of characters, there isn't the same setting or anything like that. It's just a different realm that he was running campaigns in. Now, it was later reintegrated, and the Crystania continent is far south of Forcelia, but that wasn't really the vibe at the time. It originally started out as a replay, then got adapted into a light novel, and then you get the shared universe thing where you had authors come and go with it. And then no. Then it and there's quite a few light novels in the series that happened. Then it stopped in 2012. It was a hell of a run because Crystania started out with Legend of the Sealed in 1994. You had a total of 8 replays, and then a total of 17 novels. Actually, no, 8, and thus 18 books entirely. And there's a different reading order for them: the chronological version and the recommended version on the Lodas wiki. But the title proper is just Crystania. Legend of Crystania is a different beast entirely. Uh, in the Now, Legend of Crystania itself was used that was based on the first adventurers story. And there was one book that titled itself Legend of Crystania, but it's one of those cases where things get a bit complicated. But the that was a prequel novel, and even then, I don't think in the original novel Pirates showed up at all. Uh, and it's one of those things where you've got a bunch of crossover, and one of these days I would like to do a series of streams reading through some of the novels and replays. But that being said, and also I do have to correct myself. Ashram and Piratus did show up, but they showed up in the later part of Legend of the Drifters in the novels, but it's arguably that was done mainly to get get Lodas readers into Crystania, which is absolutely hilarious to me because remember, Piratus was created by the OVAs. Like in the original novel for the first few Lodas books, she wasn't in them. The anime added that character in. Mizuno liked the character and added her into the novels.
We're gonna have to have a death match between Daryl Dixon and Piratus.
Why?
Because it'd be funny.
God damn it. But since it has been integrated into Forcelia, it is worth noting that it has more in common with, say, Chaos Land in the sense that it is there is a bit of a different approach. But what we have here is the first part, and was a supplemental part of an issue of Comptique magazine, which that's a name you're going to hear a lot. And it is kind of funny that Lodas Companion is used as the rule set for this, which you weren't here for that, Monarch, but Lodas Companion is what Group SNE ended up making in part because they weren't allowed to use D&D to actually make a Crystania book. Not a Crystania book, a Lodos book. Like, TSR was perfectly fine with them putting up replays in magazines. But as soon as the idea of making a full-on book came along, they didn't want to play ball, and that's when the lawyers came out. Because this is still Lorraine Williams era TSR. And Lodos Companion is heavily inspired by basic role-playing in terms of how its rule set works. It is a percentile-based system. A lot of the design was to try and bring in people who had only played the Lodos PC games into TTRPGs. A move that is amusing to me as somebody who got endless amounts of shit for wanting to bring video game players into tabletop. And here, this was doing it 20 years before I did. But getting to the meat and potatoes. Let's see, the centerpiece of this supplement is, of course, the Crystania RPG itself, a brand new system constructed with the effort of Ryo Mizuno and Group SNE. And then they go into what the thing is going to have. This isn't going to be a very large book, because this is only only part 1. And they go into Crystania is a world isolated from the outside by a great cliff, a world of perfect harmony ruled by a cycle set by animal gods. An invasion by the people of the dark shatters this harmony. 6 young people come to Crystania to meet with Fenes, the chief of the animal gods, to oppose the people of the dark. After meeting with the other animal gods, Fenes decides to break the seal in Crystania and expose it to the chaos of the outside world. But the first thing they go into is the mythology from the creation myth of Crystania, where it was born from a primordial giant. And some of this does cross over with the creation myth of Sword World, because you do have elements like Phalaris and Faris, the Dark God and the Supreme God, as well as the primordial giant that is meant to be part of the creation myth. A giant that died, and from its corpse were born the gods, as well as the world that everyone inhabits, because Ryo Mizuno was taking a lot of inspiration from RuneQuest. But then they go into the Age of Cycles, where it talks about the continent of Crystania was born through the unanimous will of the animal gods, becoming a unique place entirely different from the outside world. The forces of chaos were eliminated as much as possible, and Crystania became a perfected world, in accordance to the will of the animal gods. Those who lived there followed by the will of the animal gods, living and dying according to their predetermined fate. Forces belonging to chaos, such as disease and disaster, never completely disappeared. However, even these were controlled by the will of the animal gods, and were merely calamities that befell only those who were destined to be in those places. In the world of Crystania, history does not change according to the flow of time that governs the outer world, but rather repeats itself according to the destiny ordained by the animal gods. This is what we call a cycle. The time from sunrise to sunset is half a cycle of light, and the time from night to dawn is half a cycle of darkness. Then, of course, going into a bit into that, and essentially it operates on a lunar cycle that doesn't change. It is also divided into 4 seasons. And instead of referring to them like we normally would, they refer to them as the season of ice, the season of water, the season of fire, and the season of wind. And then in present-day Crystania, these terms are gradually disappearing. The solar cycle is called a year, the monthly cycle is called a month, and the smaller cycle is called a day. This is said to be one of the first customs to spread among the cultures brought from outside. Currently, these terms brought from the outside world are more prevalent. In the past, Crystania was believed to have repeated grand historical cycles over hundreds of solar cycles. This is the now lost cycle known as the Great Cycle. At the beginning of each great cycle, the animal gods would meet to discuss whether there were any changes that needed to be made in preparation for a new cycle. Yet these meetings rarely resulted in any substantial shifts, not until the will of fate was finally broken. So what you effectively have is the ancient times for Crystania was a time loop. Potentially. And hold on a moment because we seem to have a bit of technical issue. There we go. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. OBS. You don't have to remind me of that issue. And I see that Monarch had to step aside for a moment, but before I keep going.
Oh, that was actually a little while ago.
But after that is the defection of Danan. The animal god Fuji, the great swan of the lake, at a certain meeting decided that a great calamity would befall those who worshipped her, and was heartbroken by the cruel fate predetermined for her people. She separated her land from Crystania and lowered it to sea level. By doing so, she broke away from Crystania's cycle, exposing her people to the natural flow of time that governed the outside world. To Fuji, an unpredictable future was far better than a guaranteed disaster. This severed land would eventually become known as the Danan region. However, the chaotic forces surging from the sea brought a plague to the shores, ultimately leading to the total annihilation of the people of the Great White Swan. And after Fuji's decision, the cycle that governed Crystania began to fracture. Among the animal gods, opinions are divided regarding the actions of the god of the lake. In particular, Barbas, the tiger of the jungle, was dissatisfied with the cycle established by Fennes. At a meeting, Barbas proposed abolishing the cycle and regulating the world with a new one. Quote, "Since Crystania has changed, the cycle must also be changed to a new one." Several gods accepted his proposal, but Fennes remained unyielding. To Fennes, the existing cycle was the only path to order. Perfection is unique and one of a kind, he insisted. And Fennes's answer fueled some of the animal gods' anger, including Barbas. The cycle that followed this meeting was the Great Cycle of Discontent. And hang on a second because we had a couple spammers show up and they are gone. But many animal gods simply abandoned their duties, causing fate itself to unravel. The most world-altering consequence of this neglect was the arrival of the people of the Dark on the shores of Beldia. The people of the Dark, a desperate tribe of humans and dark fae, had drifted from the accursed island of the north. So I guess you could say this was Ashrem's forces after they left. or what was left of them after certain wars. Now, usually the sea currents surrounding Crystania were controlled by a sea monster called Kraken. But since Kraken had abandoned its role, they were able to come right up to the base of the cliff overlooking Crystania. The sheer cliffs, known as the Divine Barrier, prevented them from landing. And the King of the Castaways hurled curses at those cliffs, words that made him spit blood. Barbas heard the cries of him, who would liberate the lands he ruled, providing a home for the outcasts. But the price would be the king's own body. By abandoning the tiger body that had ruled him until then and sealing himself in a human body, the closest to that of a god, Barbas was able to regain much of the power he once possessed. The Drifting King accepted these conditions, thus yet another region separated from Crystania. Barbas remained inside the body of the Drifting King and has not appeared in the history of Crystania since. And I think by this point, Doku, you are seeing some familiar elements.
No, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yep.
Say that very tongue in cheek, but yes, I am noticing some strong similarities.
Mm-hmm. But this is where the region of Beldia comes to be within Crystania. And with it solidified, Beldia begins an invasion of the Crystania home mainland, beginning with Iscaria, the gateway to the rest of the continent.
See, I'm just waiting on the chapter. Carla screwed up your breakfast, and this is why.
And for the longest time, it was a stalemate until the people of the Fox, who lived in northwestern Iscaria, defected.
You know what is it with foxes and always messing things up? Specifically in Eastern mythology.
They are tricksters. On the other hand, while the original people of the Swan were wiped out, a new people arrived in Danan. Which Fuji took pity on and called upon one of the girls aboard the sailing ship, leading them to his land. Thus, the people known as the New People took their first steps in the land of Danan. They were a tribe that had drifted above from the liberated island of the north. They worked in harmony and built a nation upon the foundations of Danan. And of course, with the tribe of the Fox defecting, the carefully managed order of Crystania started to unravel. The predetermined cycle lost all of its power, and the forces of time and chaos started encroaching upon Crystania, blending in with the people of the dark invading from Beldia. Then a figure known as the God's King appeared in Beldia. Instantly accepted as the absolute ruler, he declared a war of total conquest of Crystania. Not a small-scale invasion like before, but the start of an all-out war of conquest by a massive army formed by the combined forces of Beldia and the tribe of the Fox. Which led to the God's King occupying the southwestern region of Iscaria and extending his invasion into the northeastern region, the Sanctuary of Fennis, and is being resisted by the people of the Silver Wolf. But Fennes finally made a decision, saying, "A new age is coming. I will leave it to the people themselves to decide what kind of world they desire." And then Fennes vanished, and in doing so opened a path connecting his forest region to the land of Danant to the north, as if to declare his intention that the new age should be decided by the collective will of all living creatures on Crystania. And that is the setup for what you have here. Essentially, Ashram mixing with Beld to become the God's King and launching conquest on Crystania. So, the circumstance may change, but the Dark Knight is still the Dark Knight. You know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Though as far as who the new people are, uh, I'd have to double check that, but I don't think the new people are also from Lodos. Given the
I was looking through the characters. I'm pretty sure they are not.
Mm-hmm. But so obviously when we get to the rules section, the first thing they get into is character creation. A lot of this is going to be very familiar from when we covered the Lodos Companion. But your ability score is the sum of a 3d6 roll plus a racial modifier. And we do have the familiar abilities of strength, endurance, agility, intelligence, luck, and a new one we'll get into in a bit. Obviously, your choice of class. The 6 classes here are warrior, knight, priest, scout, sorcerer, and shaman. Depending on what race you pick, you are locked off from certain classes. Dwarves cannot become shamans, sorcerers, or knights. Elves cannot become priests or knights, and half-elves cannot become knights. But in addition, and this is one of the new things that's added, you choose an aspect. An aspect means becoming a servant of an animal god. You can choose not to worship the animal gods, and characters without an aspect can also exist. Characters who possess an aspect are called animal masters. Like classes, aspects also have levels, and characters can use special abilities depending on the level. Of course, life force and mental power is your HP and MP. We covered that before, and how that particularly works. And of course, same thing with resistance. We covered that when we talked about the Lodos Companion. And there's also concentration, which is something that can be used in place of skills. We did briefly cover that as well. And when it comes to skills, you have attack skills, defense skills, thief skills, magic skills, and resistance, which is going to be based on your particular class, as well as the damage bonus based on your strength. But Interestingly, for experience, you do have to choose between whether or not you're leveling your class or your aspect.
You know,
And
there's one thing I've noticed in this section, and I find it rather disappointing, and I didn't think I would miss it this much, but they're not talking as much smack about half-elves, and I kind of miss that.
they didn't talk smack about half-elves, it was just Skyfire they talked smack about because somebody really hates him.
Again, that level of banter though was really funny. I'm kind of missing that.
Yep. Obviously, it's a little hard to do. It's a little harder to do that in what was effectively an add-on to a magazine in this case.
Fair point. I didn't think about that aspect. No, good point. Good point.
Yep.
It would still be nice though.
Mhm.
Make up a throwaway character just so we could talk smack.
Yep. But the amount of XP to level up is the same regarding whether it's class or aspect. You just have to pick which one the points are going into. Now, of course, if you don't have a aspect, if you're not an animal master, that's not going to matter. And as you level up, life force and mental power go up, skills and resistance go up, spell level goes up, largely with each odd-numbered level, largely like how we saw with Lodos Companion. Warriors and knights get more attacks per turn. And there is a certain ability growth per each level. When you level up aspect, one of the big things that levels up is your talent level. Characters belonging to an aspect gain a special ability each time their aspect level reaches an odd level. These abilities are called talents. So, and we'll get to talents in more detail a bit later. But I will admit I know a lot of people are going to compare some aspects to this to old school D&D, but one thing I do enjoy, for one, MP instead of spells per day. Spells per day will always be my whipping boy. But also, the only people who get multiple attacks are the martial characters, which normally I'd be like, oh, whatever, just more basic attack. But in this case, because of how restrained it is, it doesn't feel as much of a problem as it is in, say, AD&D. Especially since I don't have to figure out, okay, how do I have 3 attacks over 2 turns? How does that work?
Just does. It just works. Don't think that hard about it.
Roll some dice and pick odds and evens, and that might determine my answer.
Mm-hmm. So here it's just a case of if you depending on your level, you're gonna have 1 or 2 attacks. If you're knight or warrior, you only get an extra attack at 5th level. Now, when it comes to combat, initiative works the same. It is roll a d10, see if that's higher than the monster's initiative to see if you go first. And if everybody gets one action. When you're attacking, you're doing a hit roll. The hit roll is your combat skill minus the defender's defense skill. If you roll less than or equal, you hit. Then you'd roll damage, which is based on the weapon of choice. And can be subtracted by armor, or just tough hides. If you roll a D100, and the result is 1/10 of the success rate of the hit roll, that is a crit. In which case you do damage and you ignore armor. And there are a few other few things to put in. Uh, when it comes to skill checks, they are again a percentile roll. Depending on the difficulty level, you might have modifiers ranging from plus 100 to 50 to 20 to 0 to minus 20 to minus 50 to minus 100. And hold on a moment because there we go. My PDF reader was acting up. The attack skill can also be used for physical rolls. And of course, Thief can be used for dexterity rolls, and Magic is synonymous with knowledge, so it can be used for knowledge rolls as well. And Concentration is, for all intents and purposes, the equivalent of what the luck roll was in Lodos Companion. It is a set amount. No matter what level you are, it does not improve. You can always use it as an alternative when doing a check. If you manage to succeed, it is always treated as a critical. You can use concentration either when you've failed it regularly or before you roll the regular type of roll. But whatever you generated for concentration at the start, that is what that character's concentration rating is going to be for their entire career. But we of course do have how magic works. A lot of the magic types are going to be familiar. Shaman magic, the use of spirits. Sorcerer magic, the ancient kingdoms magic. Priest magic, the use of the gods. Dark priest magic, which in Lodos Companion was called Demon Scream. And common magic. The cantrips, essentially. And the use in magic essentially works the same way as we saw in Lodos Companion. Sometimes, if there isn't a resistance roll required, it is fire and forget. Although not instant, because some spells do require a bit of time, and casting a spell as a baseline takes 10 seconds. And you can only use it once per round. Of course, you still have to pay up in MP. And if you run out of MP, you lose consciousness. So best not to do that. And of course, some of the rules for summoning, which is a gradual use of spirit. But then we get to the animal gods, the new thing that's added in for Crystania. So the abilities you get from your tie to an animal god is talents. Talents have levels, much like spells, and every 2 levels, an increase in the aspect level lets you use higher level talents. As a general rule, each talent can be used up to the number of times equal to the aspect level per day. So a character with aspect level 3 can use their level 1 and level 2 talent 3 times each. So with aspects, we do have a bit of the Vancian model. And through that, you do have certain talent-like effects. Though I guess I'd say these are akin to what might be divine domains, since you are dealing with animal gods, as mentioned before. But in having that affiliation, you also have a bit of followers in the form of the animals that they're associated with. But first we have the basic talents. And so you have animal communication, animal walk, so you can walk in the same way as the minions of the animal god you worship. Partial animal, animal sense, animal form, summon animal. They are arranged a bit odd, I will note that. But those are basic abilities. Then there are aspects that are tied to specific ones. The main one that they go into is Fennes. The terrain that he controls, the land he controls, his kin, which are the Silver Wolves, what he governs, and what his followers are called. And a set of talents dedicated just to him. Which, given the description of the Silver Wolf and some of his abilities, there's a part of me that wonders, should we have a war god put his hand in his mouth? Seriously, none of you? Or did you all hit BRB?
One went over my head. I'm not gonna lie.
Tweer? The guy who had his hand bitten off by Fenris?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But they do mention a few other animal gods. It is somewhat amusing that the animal gods and the divine magic of priests are two different things. After that, they do go into monsters, which works about the way you'd expect, as well as items. In the back end, that's where they have the full list of spells, as well as weapons and who can use what weapons. In addition to that is the stats for the kins, which is on a 2-page spread. As well as the monster list. And ending with the fact that a part 2 is in the works that's covering a bit more. Like, What we have here is nice, but this very much feels like a preview of something bigger.
Yeah, there's things I'm not entirely sure how I walk away from this feeling. Specifically, like how it's splitting your experience between class and aspect. Like, fundamentally, it's an idea I can get behind, depending on what it looks like when you level up your class and when you level up an aspect.
Which we do have the answer to that. Oh.
Is a chunk of that from the Lodos Companion?
So it's on page 9 in this, where you roll the life force and mental power tables when you level up and add the results of what you currently have. Um, you get a set amount of points to the different skill types based on your class. Every other level, you get a new spell, and as mentioned, when you get 5th level, warriors and knights get an additional attack.
Mechanically, how would this actually stack up comparing it to like how useful the talents from the animal gods are? Just
Yeah.
the talents.
I think the tricky part with judging that is we only have only one proper list to work with.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that if we ever get the part 2 book, that will have more of them.
Yeah. Because that's kind of the only noticeable thing I'd possibly have a hang up on. It's kind of like, I'll just use Pathfinder as the example with like their trap feats. Like, why would you ever grab some of that shit?
Um, a, a lot of the ones we saw for Fennis are built on wolves, and I think with the aspects that's going to be more on thematics.
Yeah. So like that's just a potential worry I have. I don't have quite enough of a grasp for how everything in the game would actually flow to know if that would actually be a problem or not.
Honestly, from what I'm
I
seeing,
don't
I don't see
think so. I'm kind of with you there.
Uh, I think it will ultimately depend on how XP is utilized,
Yeah.
and that's something that you can't really account for from the designer's perspective. But Doku, what did you think regarding Crystania? I know this is a bit light compared to what we saw with Lodos Companion.
And it's not all that different, but at the same time, like, yeah, I don't know. I think I would rather just play Lotus Companion. Like, I don't dislike it.
Well, this is an add-on to Lodos Companion. Let me be clear.
I don't. I'm still kind of of the same opinion. I don't dislike it. I don't think there's anything bad about it. I'm just it. How do I say this nicely? It just doesn't really pique my interest as much. Yeah,
But
again, it's not that it's bad. It's just I don't know. I know where my interests lie and where my kind of sweet spot is, and I have some nostalgia goggles. So it's not necessarily my cup of tea, but I definitely play it.
but if we get a part 2, I'll probably revisit that, because what we have here is more of a preview, like a quick start, than anything else.
I would definitely like to see a part 2 and some sort of follow-on, because I'm sure there's probably some stuff that is not included
Yeah.
that would actually get my interest. It's just this one's not necessarily doing it for me.
There is. Oh, it's just not translated yet. But with that said, we're going to take a break for a couple minutes, and when we come back, we're going to dive headfirst into Wizardry. So, see you in a few. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of you who do not for those of you who do not have access to it, and I will put this in the description. I thought I had done earlier. I'm going to be putting in the archive link for the Wizardry RPG. It is in multiple formats, but obviously we're using the PDF version. I ended up getting this kind of as a happy accident. So, obviously, Wizardry is a venerable name in video game RPGs, one I have a love-hate relationship with. It did all right in the States and in Europe, but it did really well in Japan, to the point where you have games like the Black Onyx that are basically Wizardry made by a Japanese studio. Not because it was trying to do copycat, but because there was so much demand for more Wizardry, and the main supplier wasn't able to keep up. Now, the Wizardry TRPG that we have is one that got translated by a fan at the start of the year. It is going to be largely on the text. And if I remember correctly, this was one that originally appeared in Japanese stores in a box set. And it's kind of funny that we're talking about Wizardry now because Atari acquired the rights to the first 5 Wizardry games. So, Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord, The Knight of Diamonds, Legacy of Lilgemin, I probably mispronounced that. The Return of Werdna, and Heart of the Maelstrom. The latter one's still up in the air. There was a remake of Mad Overlord at one point, as well as a spin-off called Nemesis. But it is kind of funny that Wizardry would get embraced more and more in Japan, including several Japanese exclusive novels. That were basically novelizations of the games. And that is not getting into the Japanese-made series that were done by Starfish, for example. Or a different series that was done by or a different Wizardry game that was done by KSS. 1 year before Wizardry 8, which is probably my favorite Wizardry, but also the one I have a love-hate relationship with the most. And then there's the Busen series that was done by Rakjin. That was a couple of PS2 games. One of them is Tale of the Forsaken Land in 2001, and then Busen Zero in 2003. And also another project on the Game Boy Advance called Wizardry Summoner. But the only The only non-Japanese entries that were done were main were the original the original main series, going from Mad Overlord all the way to Wizardry 8. But it is kind of funny how a bunch of different Japanese studios decided to just run with it. Uh, some of that is due to them getting screwed over by management. Uh, but there was also just a series of flops, especially in the 90s, that killed the original Surtech, including one called Armed and Delirious, about playing a grandmother suffering from senility.
Because of course they would.
Mm-hmm. But Surtech was, but at first it was Surtech Software, later Surtech Entertainment Corp. They were founded by the Strolex and Robert Woodhead. The original Surtech closed its doors in 2001. Its Canadian counterpart, Surtech Canada, closed up 2 years later. But let's see, what I'm looking for is there was also a Wizardry card game called Whizball, apparently. But what I'm trying to find is when the Wizardry TTRPG that we're covering originally released. And unfortunately, it keeps giving me things to Swords and Wizardry, which is not what I'm asking for.
Looks like it was released in 1988.
Which, okay, I managed to find it. I managed to find it, and yeah, 1988 was when it was published. I think there were a few others that were in the Wizardry family.
Are you looking for this one? It's saying the initial 1988 box set included the basic rule book, scenario book for Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord, Bride of the Black Crystal, sponsored by Voltok.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, that was 1988.
Mm-hmm. There were some reprints. Just on a whim, I found a third printing version, which I'm not going to be buying because aside from language barrier, the thing is like $150.
Ooh, that's pricey.
Which is what you'd expect when you're dealing with a game that's been with a version from 1993.
I mean, yeah. I'm gonna say this half jokingly. That's pricey to everybody else that is not someone who plays Warhammer 40,000.
Yeah. But since this came out in 88, so this was in the same time as Sword World. The same span of years, late 80s. Which I do wonder when Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord first reached Japanese store shelves. I wasn't able to find that.
Let me check. Let me see if I can find for you.
Now, I know some have argued that Wizardry is the spawning point for what some people call the JRPG. That is not true. At least not entirely. The origin point as far as that particular style is still Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest was built on the idea of let's make something like Wizardry but streamlined for the Famicom. That much is true. But that was after a bunch of iterations and a bunch of non-Surtech studios decided to take a crack at it.
And okay, so you're looking for a Wizardry Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord releases in Japan?
Yeah.
So it was released on the NES in 1987, PC 88 in 1985, TurboGrafx in 1993, and Super Famicom in 99.
The main one I'm going to be thinking of is the PC 98 one. Especially
Okay, so
since
that would be 85 then.
yeah. And in between that, that's when you have stuff like the Black Onyx, which I've already covered. But I think we also have credits to ASCII and Surtech on the cover. You're not going to see as nice of art throughout the book. This is going to be largely text. And I will note the PDF is not bookmarked or hyperlinked, which is unfortunate, but considering the fact that for the longest time I didn't even think I'd see a translation of this, it is what it is. But can I also take the time to continuously be amused at the fact that when I was coming up in tabletop, I was told multiple times, very energetically, by some of the older heads, I still hear it now, that it is wrong to be trying to cross over between video game and TTRPG.
Okay, I have to ask the question, and I'm sure you know it's coming. What's the logic or reasoning behind that?
There really wasn't one. Some argued for the distinctiveness of each other, or the fact that there isn't role playing in a video game, or a lot of the arguments were very gatekeeper, and not the kind of gatekeeping that you and I would endorse. The country club kind of gatekeeping.
Yeah, I had a feeling that's what you were referencing.
Mm-hmm. Where,
because again, to me that doesn't make any sense. I'm sure it doesn't make sense to you either, which is probably the reason you brought it up.
Didn't, and I mocked it for most of my life.
Yeah, because I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, okay,
yeah, when
you're choosing attributes, okay,
when you
here, choose your attributes. Yeah, choose your attributes. Okay, cool. Here, choose your skills. Okay, cool. Choose your class. Okay, cool.
The closest
So
I've
what's the
seen when it
difference?
comes to the whole role-playing part is the fact that your choices are predetermined in a video game, and there's a much bigger emphasis on improvisation in a TTRPG, which while that is true, you have plenty of games where people are significantly attached to their characters. I think if I were to use an example of this, consider how people treat the run they have with Mass Effect as their version of Shepard.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I'm gonna try to be as impartial and objective as possible on this one. I can understand the people that are like, well, look, if it's a video game, you only have this set amount of dialogue options, you only have this set amount of outcomes, you're not really talking with another person, you don't have a GM. Okay, sure, fine. It's not the most broad spectrum of possibilities and outcomes that you could possibly expect from a RPG experience.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean you can't actually have an RPG experience in a video game. Okay, it's just slightly more limited. All right. It doesn't mean that it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, to this day, the first Fable on Xbox is still one of my favorite games of all time, and it is rather quite limited in its scope. But the scope that it does provide is just enough that every single playthrough is slightly different, but I know exactly what I'm getting, and it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't need I don't need the entire spectrum of the rainbow. I'm okay with like 2 or 3 colors. It's fine.
Yeah. And admittedly, a lot of this is overcompensation, especially in the 90s when console style RPGs started really taking off, and even in the 2000s when you had the bidding war of anime licensing, which
Yeah.
Monarch and I had talked about on Adventures some time ago. And I've mentioned a fondness for the sheer insanity of everybody trying to grab different whatever anime they could in the 2000s.
Oh, that was fun, wasn't it?
But
Well, depending on what your idea of fun is. For me, it was fun.
Mm-hmm. And
Angel Sanctuary.
there was this mindset of this idea that because TTRPGs had been there the longest, that everybody else should be secondary to them. Again, there was a very country club attitude. And the reason why projects like Lodas Companion and Wizardry RPG amuse me so much is there's a very generational argument that tries to be made when it comes to bringing video game elements into TTRPGs. Like, it's something that was new.
And actually, real quick, I hate to interrupt you, but I just remembered the exact term I was looking for in regards to what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's not gatekeeping. They're trying to be purists, and in that sense, they become extremely pretentious and ivory tower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is why I call them a country club.
Yeah, exactly. It's not gatekeeping. It's just pretentiousness for the sake of being pretentious.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure a lot of them think that they are, and some of them want to act like they're some defender of the proper way to do things. Basically, that they have a martyr complex. But this game came out in '88. Sword World came out in '89. Lodas Companion wasn't far off. And I've seen other entries like Tormenta has been around since the early 2000s. I think even maybe earlier than that. And you have some RPGs that were based on television series, like the fact that there is a TTRPG based on fucking Dallas that came out around the time of the show is just wild to me.
That needs to go into a museum. Like, the fuck.
Oh, but
it's impressive.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say it's good. It is. It's certainly
I didn't
not
say
something
good. It's impressive, but it doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah. Especially since the only thing that most people remember from Dallas is the whole Who Shot JR thing, and I think most people remember that not from Dallas itself, but from The Simpsons when they
Yep.
spoofed it.
Yep. That and oh crap, what was Wow, what was the magazine at that time that had that as like their headline?
Uh,
Was it MTV magazine?
no, it's probably TV Guide.
Yeah, I think it was TV Guide.
Like,
But either way,
like around that time, MTV wouldn't have been a twinkle in the eye. But getting back on the rails, they first open up with talking about Wizardry. You know, it's very, since they talk about it first releasing in '81, it's very clear that the focus here is Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord. And a lot of this is written with the idea of explaining what TTRPGs are to somebody who has only played computer games. And given the remark of even here in Japan, Wizardry has been ported to most domestic consoles and is just released on the Famicom. I think the Wizardry audience that they're thinking of with this publication is the PC one, which was gonna be the better way to play. If only because PC 88 was gonna be more powerful than a Famicom.
well, and to be fair, that's not necessarily a bad thing to do because you want to at least let people know like, hey, this is how the game is played. It's a different format.
It's the same thing with, say, compare the original Metal Gear on the NES and then compare its equivalent on the MSX.
Yeah, exactly. Or I guess another example is probably not necessarily as good of one, but it's like someone who's used to playing a side scroller and it's like, hey, here's a 3D game. Here's how a joystick works.
Yeah, but then they go into playing an RPG, a bit of an example, and then using the dice. So they say that the different types of dice are used depending on the situation. The most commonly will be a 20-sided dice to represent the numbers 1 to 100. And then explaining how you do that. Stating, let us offer an explanation. One of the dice is rolled to produce the tens digit, and the other the ones digit. The dice are of different colors, so decide in advance which is the tens and which is the ones. Imagining a result of 17 on the first die and 19 on the second, we ignore the first number on each die and solve the result of 79. So, despite it saying you're using 2d20, this is really a standard percentile setup. I'm not sure why they picked d20s. Like normally, I don't subscribe to the d20 hate brigade that seems to be a thing these days. But in a case like this, I'm like, why are you using a d20 if you're gonna ignore the tens?
That is a good question because it really does boil down to the simple aspect of you could have simplified the system. Like you didn't have to do it this way, but I don't know. Maybe they just like the style of it, I guess. I don't know. I really don't have a good explanation.
If I had to guess, it's a classic case of the best ability is availability.
Yeah. They might have just included it as like a way to, in case someone doesn't have D10s, like, look, you can still just use your D20s.
Yeah.
Here's how you can make that work.
And I guess
it's weird. This is what they lead with.
I guess it could be something like the developers who are making it at the time. It's like, this is just the dice that we have available to us, so we're just gonna build it around this. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe it was just a matter of convenience in the development process. Like,
well, I know the choice for D6s with Sword World was more of a convenience because bigger polyhedrals were kind of hard to get, especially outside of the more central areas in Japan. Whereas everybody's got D6s around somewhere.
And again, that definitely could be a reason for it. I'm going to give benefit of the doubt and assume that's what it was. It was just more of a matter of convenience.
Yep. But beyond that is going into progressing the game and the like, which is nice, but it's not something that we need to go over here. So then we get to player characters. After explaining what they are, there is the assumption that an adventuring party should have 6 characters, much like an adventuring party in the video game. So fair. So you have the 9 steps for character creation. You know, name, race, sex, alignment, your stats, your class, your HP, how much gold you have, and then your starting items. It is interesting that your starting stats are preset here instead of them being something you roll. And the base stats for each are strength, intelligence, piety, vitality, agility, and luck. And you do get a stat growth bonus in each choice of race.
You know, as a brief aside, I actually like the preset stats when it comes to character creation, because I don't like rolling for things in the very beginning because it feels too swingy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like to know where my baseline is and then build from there.
Yeah. So the races that we have available are human, elf, dwarf, gnome, hobbit. That's pretty much the base races that we have. Your choice of sex will determine certain modifiers. Male characters get +1 vitality. Female characters get +1 agility.
Pretty bog standard stuff.
Mm-hmm. Then your choice of alignment. This isn't even doing the whole 9 alignment grid. It's just is your character good or evil? So it does have an interaction with certain equipments. And when it comes to statistics, you are doing some degree of rolling. It's just not as full swing as some games. So the range for statistics is going to be familiar. 8, lowest is 3, highest is 18. If you have your scores reduced to 2 or less for any reason, you die and cannot be resurrected.
There's the wizardry I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely brutal under certain circumstances.
Like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with Wizardry because, while it is a classic and there's plenty of stuff I like within the Wizardry series, it is also evil.
Yes, it is. It can be unnecessarily brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a fun, challenging type of way, more of in a kind of, here's my middle finger, deal with it type of way.
Yep. So at character creation, you roll a d6 plus 5. These are your bonus points and can be assigned freely to any statistics determined by your race to a maximum value of 18. If you roll a 1, you retain the 1 and roll the die again. So if you first roll a 1, then your bonus points are 1 plus 5 plus d6. If you keep getting 1, you can keep adding it.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like doing it in that order rather than if you roll max and you re-roll and add to that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's a way of throwing you a bone if you really have the ire of the dice gods.
You know, it's funny because I'm sure that's what the intention was, but in practice, it's more of like, let me increase my anxiety every time I roll the dice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm suddenly pretty happy if I just roll a 1 now.
Mhm. So the only way you're getting more bonus points than a normal approach is if you really have bad luck.
Yeah.
Like if you end up rolling a 1 5 times in a row, which if you do that at my table, eventually I'm just gonna say, give me your dice. We're swapping it out. I'm putting this one to the back. I will have that exercised after the show. Because we've all been there. We've had a die that just seems to hate us, so we toss it out and have it replaced.
Yeah. If you play any game that requires you to roll dice, and you play it at least 4 or 5 times, you've had that moment happen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I loved one game I was running. It was D&D 5th edition. Not my favorite edition, but that's what my group was playing. Gets an advantage on her attack rolls. She rolls both ones. She failed almost every time she had advantage. 2 different dice.
How?
Like, only once was it 2 ones, but just the fail rate of advantage for that game was nuts.
Mm-hmm.
She had more success when she just rolled the 1 dice.
Yeah.
Sometimes statistical improbabilities seem to show up, and they really like showing up when you're playing dice games.
Mm-hmm. So
Hence the dice gods.
Yep. We've made clear the dice gods hate you. So
Oh yeah.
even with that, no matter what, after spending the points, your score cannot go over 18. Depending on where you spend points, that is going to determine what classes you qualify for. The example they give is, if you want to be a mage, you have to have an intelligence of at least 11. And you must have these distributed so that you meet the requirements for at least 1 class. But
excellent news! I qualify for Winston Drunkard.
Mm-mm. But then they go into what the ability. They call them statistics. I'm gonna call them ability scores just out of habit, especially with that cap of 18. So strength increases adds to both damage and accuracy. Which is an interesting move. Yeah, if it penalizes if it's 7 or under, but a lot of the if you have, when it comes to the base statistics we saw earlier, I think 7 is intended to be the baseline. Or rather 8 would be. Though with intelligence, it determines the acquisition rate for spells as well as additional spell uses. Same thing with piety, just with divine spells. Vitality is, the higher you have it, the more HP you'll get per level, and the better you'll be able to resist poison, paralysis, and petrification. A high vitality also means that resurrection is more likely to succeed in bringing you back to life should you die. Which, this is wizardry, you will. And agility grants a bonus to accuracy when using bow weapons. It is also a factor in how well you can disarm traps. Luck is the strength of one's luck. It also affects the likelihood of avoiding things like breath attacks. And generally, success or failure in things not falling under any other statistic are determined by luck. Then we have the classes proper. And each one of them has a requirement, a stat growth bonus, and this is in addition to the stat growth bonus that you got from your race, as well as your starting HP and how much HP you get leveling up. So we have Fighter, which has it talks about having the highest critical rate among all classes. Mage, low HP, can't use armor, so dies in short order if placed in the front row. Priest, which does require a piety of 11. You do get plus 10% to piety rolls as you develop. But they do not get extra attacks like fighters do. They also get destroy undead right out of the gate, as you would need so. But then thief. Then we have some of the more interesting ones. Samurai, which requires 14 strength, 10 intelligence, 5 vitality, and 7 levels in another class, as well as being of good or neutral alignment. I feel like the Samurai, Lord, and Ninja, and Bishop are the advanced classes, obviously. Especially since each one of them requires 7 levels in another class, along with their prerequisites.
I'm going to note something that these descriptions actually do very well, because this is a very simple game. Under Fighter, it just says, there is no point in placing them anywhere except the front row, where they're best positioned to hit the enemies. Like, if you're going to have classes this restricted in what they can do, be this direct about it.
Yep.
I actually really like that was included.
Yeah, Samurai doesn't have the crit rate increase that Fighter does, but is similar to combat. But they do also learn mage spells at a slower rate. However, they require more XP to level up. Then the Lord is similar to Samurai, but learns Piety magic and can cast Dispel at level 7. And the Ninja has that they kill the enemy instantly on critical hit, regardless of remaining HP, and can walk on walls or on the ceiling and attack from out of reach. Also improves AC if they are unarmored and fighting with their bare hands. Their weakness is low HP. And bishops have a higher amount of XP to level up, but they learn both mage and cleric spells. But then HP, self-explanatory there. You roll your HP depending on your class. Upon leveling up, all HP should be re-rolled to create a new total. If the new total is equal to or less than the previous total, it becomes the previous total plus 1. When calculating your new HP, the vitality modifier is based on your vitality score as it is after leveling up. But you also start with 2d100 plus 100 gold, which you can use to purchase your starting items. Your unarmored AC is 10, unless you are a ninja. And then as part of the finishing sections, you have some of the basics along with your accuracy, which is based on your level plus the target's AC times 5 plus any accuracy modifiers. Regardless of your target's AC, your chance to hit always has a minimum value of 10%. So the accuracy thing is basically Thaco, even if they don't call it that. So it says a level 1 warrior with a plus 10 bonus to accuracy, thus has a 65% chance of hitting a foe with 10 AC. a 15% chance of hitting a foe with 0 AC, and a 10% chance of hitting a foe with anything less than 0 AC. Fuck me, this is Thaco. We are... Although I think that the formula for this is a little bit more user-friendly than Thaco is. Then we do have a example. And you are leveling up through XP, and you have different XP thresholds based on level. So this was, I hate to say this, acceptable in the 80s. You know, the fact that not every class levels up at the same rate, which it's one of those things where it was the style at the time. It is not something I miss.
I've never cared for it.
It is a consequence of the mindset of balancing across a campaign, as opposed to balancing in the moment.
Hey Mildred, I gotta run. I gotta get to bed.
No worries, Doku. I will catch you next time.
All right, guys. Good one.
Lit.
But now, upon leveling up, your statistics may change. For each one, you calculate the chance that that score will increase by subtracting your current value from 20, then multiplying that number by 5 and adding any modifiers. For example, if you have 15 strength and a plus 15 modifier to strength growth, your chance of being able to increase your strength score is 40%. If you then roll below this number on a D100, the value of that strength of that statistic is increased by 1. If you roll a 91 or higher, it decreases by 1. If you increase a statistic that's already at 18, you increase a different one freely that is not yet at 18. So we have a bit of basic role-playing's roll to advance kind of thing. As your character gets levels, your HP value improves. When you level up, you reroll your HP, as we mentioned before. Certain classes get increases to their number of attacks and damage as they level up. That being Fighter, Samurai, Lord, and Ninja. So, from level 1 to 2, they don't have a damage modifier, and they have only 1 attack. At 3 to 4, they get 2 attacks. At 5 to 6, they get 3. At 7th, they get 3 and a +1 to damage. Okay, this is a bit odd. At 8th, 13th, and 20th, it goes 3, 2, and 3, and a bonus of 2, 7, and 14. Which is a bit odd. It says the maximum number of attacks is 3. From level 7, instead of gaining more attacks, you instead gain an increase to your damage with each level applied on top of their damage modifier from strength. This applies to each attack that hits. In addition, your accuracy and critical hit chance are proportional to your level. So change your accuracy and your character sheet when you level up. Why the 2 there under 13? I'm going to assume that was a typo. But you also gain the increased number of spells that you can cast. So there are some other changes. Bishops gain Dispel at level 5, and Lords gain Dispel at level 7. Ninjas gain AC as you increase your level, but this applies only if you're completely without armor. So, yeah, we are doing Thaco. We have descending AC. I'm not a fan of descending AC, but that to the side. Get to that later. You do have the possibility of losing levels, because yes, we have that bullshit.
That always feels like a nightmare just to try to work with losing levels.
Yep. And once you reach a certain level, you can switch to one of the advanced classes, or you can switch from a basic class to another basic. If you wish to change class and you meet the requirements of the class you wish to change into, you can do so when you're in town by paying a registration fee to the Adventurers Guild. When you do this, you lose all XP and go back to level 1. You lose 3 points from each of the 6 statistics unless this 3-point decrease would decrease a score to less than the base value for your race. Your age and HP don't change. Spells known and number of times you can cast them do not change when you change class. However, you may see your modifier decrease if you lose piety or intelligence from changing class. If a and if you characters who change class lose everything else except for HP and spells known. So I get this, but the question that I have is why are you paying ability score points to change class? I get that it was the fucking style at the time.
I am going to give an overall comment on some of these systems. Some of these systems sounds like they make more sense in context of a video game than a tabletop. On one hand, like with how the very formulaic nature of how like you're raising and some of these stats on levels, all the percentages and stuff. That's not as fun to deal with when you're having to sit down and handle all the percentages.
I mean,
Which is why a lot of games you see come out like after some of the earliest tabletop RPGs try to streamline some of that math for most people, because most people don't like doing that much math.
I know some people romanticize descending AC, but there's a reason why ascending AC became more of a thing.
Yeah. It's easier math to do in your head.
Mm-hmm. But
even like the differing class level stuff, let's say they did it a little nicer and only the elite classes had a different leveling XP thing. I think that'd be a little nicer, but
the different class level thing is a basic and advanced D&D conceit.
Oh, I know. That's where it originated, but what I am saying, like, in this context, it feels like something like that isn't as big of a deal when applied to something like a video game like Wizardry, where everything's a lot more curated compared to a typical tabletop.
Yep. So,
it's like they kept all the conceits of changing a tabletop to a video game when they converted that video game back into a tabletop.
But so you do have attribute point decay as you age. And all races age at the same rate.
Sure, we'll go with that.
But then they go into combat. And instead of doing combat on a typical map, you have the combat sheet, which is a 3x5 grid. This is obviously meant to be an abstraction. If you want to use a larger grid, you can. I feel like this is there because not everybody is going to have, especially when this game came out, a full combat grid set up with miniatures and all of that. And sometimes you might want something very quick and dirty. but monsters are placed on the upper section, players on the lower. Combat is a section of rounds in which you can act once. Descending order based on highest agility score. Pretty standard fare. In combat, you can move up to 2 spaces, move up to 1 space and attack an adjacent enemy, attack with a shooting weapon, cast a spell, cast Dispel, defend, change positions with an adjacent character, or hide. Diagonal movement is permitted. Kind of funny that it took D&D until 2008 before that would become more allowable. Thieves gain +1 movement, but only to actions which contain a movement component. Ninjas increase their movement as they level, having +1 at level 1 and +2 at level 3. A ninja at level 5 or over may, as an action on their turn, attempt to climb one of the walls of the room. This requires rolling agility ×5 on a D100. And when it comes to attacking, this refers to using a melee weapon to hit an adjacent enemy. When a character is hit by a weapon, they receive damage and reduces their HP. Self-explanatory. When attacking in melee, first roll a D100 to see if you hit. This is referencing accuracy. You compare the die result with the accuracy section on the sheet, and declare the lowest AC you're able to hit. The GM then informs you if that attack hits the foe or not. And they say this method prevents players from knowing how much AC the enemy has exactly. Regardless of accuracy rates, a roll of 1 to 10 always hits, and a roll of 91 to 100 always misses. If the roll for accuracy is less than or equal to your character's level, then it is a critical hit. If you're a fighter, it's your level ×2.
I have no issues with handling critical hits this way.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense to me.
And if you do a critical hit, all damage from weapon and modifiers is doubled. If you're a ninja and crit, you instantly kill them. I do like that they say, but rumors exist of monsters who can survive even a critical hit from a ninja. If such a monster did exist, they would take normal critical hit damage instead of dying.
That's a great way to word that.
Mm-hmm. But shooting attacks can attack any enemy anywhere on the combat grid, are unaffected by additional attacks gained by level, can only be done once per round. The accuracy rating is determined by agility, not strength, and you don't get a damage modifier. Fighters do not double their critical rate when using a bow. A ninja doesn't instant kill with a crit from a bow. A thief doubles their crit rate to a maximum of 26% when using a bow. Changing between weapons is something you can do freely and doesn't affect the available actions. This part I like, because this almost encourages you to have multiple weapons instead of just sticking to the sword and board.
The weapon master who can really only get away with using one weapon.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I too like this.
Yep. So when it comes to Dispel, this is basically turn undead. Actually, no.
Why do they have the segment using magic and it is one line? See chapter 4 for using magic.
So at the moment of an encounter occurs, a D100 is rolled by the GM. If the result is less than or equal to the intelligence score times 3 of the most intelligent member of the party has recognized the monsters and are given the correct names. The party may attempt to dispel a monster whose name they do not know, but must say as part of the dispel attempt what they believe the monster to be. When Dispel is cast, a D100 is rolled by the Game Master if the target is both undead and correctly identified. If it is neither not undead or the party have its name wrong, the spell fails automatically. And they say, but the Game Master should put on a show of rolling the die anyway, so the party may think it was just a case of having rolled well enough. Each monster has a Dispel rating, with a lower number representing a monster bound to the world with more powerful magic. The chance to successfully dispel a monster is equal to its Dispel rating plus the level of the caster attempting to dispel it. The Dispel attempt succeeds if the caster rolls less than equal to the Dispel chance on a D100. If the Dispel succeeds, the player rolls a D6. A number of undead creatures of the type the caster designated with Dispel equal to the D6 result are then destroyed. Game Master chooses which one is destroyed. If there are multiple types of undead, each type must be dispelled separately as a separate action. Dispel can be attempted on the same creature any number of times, but only as a once per round action. A creature destroyed by Dispel awards full XP to the party as if it had been killed by normal means. This is far more powerful than I take it back comparing this to Turn Undead. This is Destroy Undead as an AoE, and even if you need to understand it only works on undead and you need to understand what type of undead you're dealing with, this still makes Dispel very powerful.
Yeah.
Imagine if one of the party members is a priest who is very, very lucky with their dice. Oh, we're up against a dozen skeletons. Oh, they're skeletons, huh? Alright, Dispel. And they're all gone. Gone. Reduced to atoms.
It feels like something out of the early Ultimate games. I'm pretty sure that's how some of that worked there.
Yeah, as opposed to Turn Undead, which just forces them to flee from you. Or take penalties. No, here's... And yeah, in early D&D, you did have the whole thing of how easy or difficult it was depending on the monster's hit dice. But here it's a case of, do I know the monster? All right, every monster of that type, I rolled well enough, so you are all deleted. But if you choose to defend, any attacks or shooting attacks against you suffer a 20% reduction in accuracy. Except for magic and breath attacks. You can also swap position with someone or hide. If you... Hiding is an agility roll, and as long as you keep hiding, you have to repeat the agility roll. You can move a single space on your turn without revealing yourselves by rolling a successful agility check. But then we also have the surprise round. At the start of an encounter, the GM rolls a D100. If it's 10 or less, the party gets the surprise round. If it's 96 or higher, the enemy gets one. Basically, whoever isn't surprised gets no actions. And the baseline can be modified based on situation. If you wish to flee, at the start of the round, the party member who wishes to flee rolls a D100. If the result is less than or equal to agility times 5, then the party has fled. It is a group activity, so either you all get away or none of you do. If it fails, you take no other actions that round and are free to be attacked by the monsters until the next round comes. If you are doing a surprise round but you still wish to flee, it automatically succeeds. But then they do go into things like surrender as well as reaction to a party, which is basically how hostile they are. It is a D100. If you on a 51 or over, creatures are hostile and combat occurs. On a 21 to 50, they're neutral and may be willing to pretend they didn't see the party. On a 20 or less, the creatures are friendly. However, in order to negotiate with monsters, you have to have a way of communicating with them. And if the encountered creatures are non-intelligent, the die result gets plus 100. You could have just said non-intelligent creatures are always hostile. Alignment also factors. If the party consists of good characters and the encountered monster is also good, the dice roll receives a minus 50 modifier. If the monster is evil, however, then the result would be a plus 20 modifier. If the party is evil or the monster is neutral, no modifiers apply. Which, interesting approach to handle it. But for things like poison, paralysis, and petrification, you are rolling below or equal to vitality times 5 to resist the effect. If you're poisoned, you lose 1 HP at the end of each round, and each time you finish your turn during exploration. During open field movement, you lose 1 HP every full turn. But, let's see, then flight. We also have some rules for monster morale. Once at least half the monsters in any one battle have been killed or incapacitated, the GM should roll a D100 against the morale score for each monster at the start of the following round. If the result is less than or equal to the monster's morale, they continue fighting, but if it is above the morale score, they attempt to run away, succeeding only if they can roll equal to or below their agility times 5. Unlike the PCs, monsters need not run away as a team and can flee from battle individually.
I am going to point out one of the ones you kind of glossed over a bit for enemy abilities.
Yep.
Energy drain.
Which
it's
happens.
level drain you can't resist. What the fuck?
Thanks. I hate it.
Look, I already don't care much for the whole level decreasing. I don't like that it doesn't really specify what exactly happens. Like, are you supposed to keep all of your randomly altered stats logged for what you were the previous level to know what to reduce them to?
Mm-hmm.
But cannot be resisted and happens automatically.
That is a fuck you button.
Why would you do this to your players? I'd rather just die from the rockfall. Just randomly drop rocks and kill me rather than that nonsense.
When it comes to languages, you can roll to learn a new language. This is D100 versus 5 plus the spell acquisition rate determined by their intelligence score. Success means they learn a new language. And I do like the Wizardry journal examples that they give. Then actions outside of combat, things like movement, spellcasting, and investigation. As well as things like scouting. And dealing with traps. The disarm rate is luck plus dexterity divided by 2 times 5 for thieves. Divided by 2 times 4 for ninjas, and times 2 for anyone else. But when it comes to magic, we have 2 types, mage spells and priest spells. With the spell use limit, this is how many times it can be used based on class, the school of magic, and individual stats. The number of spell casts per class per level is modified by casting statistics, either intelligence or piety, respectively. And this is the number of casts for each known spell, not in total for spells of that level. If an aforementioned mage knows Halito and Kanito, both level 1 spells, he can cast both 3 times each. A little different from the computer game version of Wizardry, but allows far more utility to casting classes, especially at low levels. So, this is technically the Vancian model, but it is done in a way that doesn't piss me off as much. Because it's not, oh, this is the number of spell charges you have total. It's, this is your spell charges per spell of that level. And if you have a high intelligence, which if you're going to be a caster, you're probably going to have high intelligence or piety, you do get more spots for it. In the case of the bishop, it's divided by 2 like that to indicate how many priest spells you get and how many mage spells you get. And then they go into magic classifications, which are universal, combat, non-combat, and damage. The range, you can only use a spell on a target within the battle grid or its approximate range. And of course, then the procedure for casting a spell. Which is about what you'd expect. This is very fire and forget. But if the spell is a damage spell, the player casting the spell rolls D100, and if it's less than or equal to the caster's level, then the damage is doubled. If it's 91 or higher, the damage is halved. So it is somewhat fire and forget, but there's ways to mess with it. And of course, some spells will have a resist number, basically a resistance roll, and you have to get under that in order to resist the spell. But after that, they list off the different spells. Which, there's quite a few of them, and I do feel like the spell list is probably one of the larger entries in this. As far as the...
It's nothing crazy that you see in here. It's all pretty simple, but you do have a good array of options.
Each spell has a learn chance, which is what you have to roll in order to, you know, learn the spell. It's that... The whole thing of odds of learning spells is something that's seen in classic games, I think, but a lot of them have a more universal approach or base it on level. This is individually based. Which, when you level up, you check what is the highest level spell that you can learn. You look at all spells of lower level to see if there are any you can learn but have not learned them, and make a note of them. For each spell not yet learned, you roll a D100 against that spell's chance of being learned, plus the spell acquisition modifier of the character trying to learn the spell based on intelligence or piety. If you roll under, you automatically learn the spell. If you roll 91 or higher, you fail. So, because of that, if you are decent enough at D100 rolls, you're gonna be getting the full range of spells. I say full range, but it's not like there's that many spells per level. In a lot of cases, I think it's just 3 or so.
Why are
Some
any of these marked at 100% then? Shouldn't the highest... Why not just mark it to 90%? Because that's the actual number.
Mhm. Oh, keep in mind, depending on your intelligence or piety score, the learn chance might be even higher.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Or if it's low,
I'm
it
not
might be
too
lower.
fond of this regardless. Like, I don't mind some degree of randomness when you're leveling up. I'm fine with that. It's cool with me. But when there's a chance you're gonna level up and just basically not get anything, which is a real possibility here,
Mhm.
that can just make leveling up feel like shit.
Yep. Then they go into items. So a lot of the standard range for weapons. And weapons are tied to classes. Which is why we have these weird-ass acronyms. Same thing when it comes to armor. Armor decreases AC. And there are other items, as well as magic items, including the good old +1, +2, and +3 weapon. Which, the number of attacks on magic weapons indicates the minimum number of attacks the weapon performs. Though that does mean if you can do 3 attacks per turn, then then the whole additional attacks thing isn't going to be as useful to you because of that whole hard cap of 3. Personally, if I was running this, I would just remove that. So that if you give the fighter a +3 weapon, let them do 6 attacks.
Otherwise, like, the whole point of their feature is worthless when you give them the best weapons available to them. How does that make any sense?
Yeah, but they do give a few examples of items from the computer game. Some of them have a chance of breaking. Some of them don't break. And there is also the matter of cursed items, which can be identified by bishops. A bishop can spend 1 turn or 1 minute to examine the item and find out whether it's a specific item and what powers, if any, it has. The player rolls D100 versus the bishop's level times 5 plus intelligence modifier. The same modifier from spell acquisition. And if they roll under, they succeed at identifying the item. And if an identification attempt fails, or one uses a magic item without due caution, then they may be cursed. The GM decides what curse an item has, but it will typically be something along the lines of minus 10% accuracy, or deal half damage with projectile weapons, or so on. And a cursed item, once held and with its curse activated, cannot be separated from the wielder. Even if it's taken by force, it will find its way back. But when it comes to monsters, human enemies based on level have a hit point bonus. There's also a morale score based on the level, at least for humanoid enemies. Then abilities for fighter type classes if you have an NPC that is humanoid and uses one of the classes. As well as a separate one for thieves. And also when it comes to the area of effect for breath attacks, which is a line, that's interesting. Usually, but then again, for this kind of system, I don't think doing a cone would be a good idea.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Mhm.
Especially with how abstracted the combat is. Like, it's not entirely abstracted, but
And while you could use a bigger grid, I feel like this game is built around the 3x5 combat grid that it has.
yeah.
But after that, we have a lengthy list of the different monsters with some very nice art for the time.
I was glancing through a lot of these earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Just like everything else in the system, this is all pretty simple and straightforward. You're not going to be struggling to understand how any of this works.
Yep. Then a setting chapter, specifically on the area of Ethelnut and the city of Lilgamen. As well as the dungeons within it, and the option to do a more open field adventure, which you could use to expand the combat grid as well as mess around with actions. There are also a few spells that are exclusive to this mode, but it's clear it's an optional approach. Then, of course, the role of the GM, which is pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, I'm going to point it out. I just happened to stop randomly on one of the monster pages. There's just a guy named Murphy's Ghost. Level 12. It's just some guy named Murphy.
Yeah.
He's this tough.
At the tail end, there's a few notes from the translator. Stating that they tried to do the best they could with the tools at their disposal. One copy of the book, a Google account, and a rudimentary grasp of GIMP. No machine translation has been used. They started translating it as something to play personally, but thought they would release it for the benefit of others as well. Wizardry came out in 1988 and was overseen by Hitoshi Yasuda, the founder and president of Group SNE and a prominent figure in the scene, as well as a translator of English-language fantasy games and books into Japanese. The base game included the rule book, which we've just read, and some short scenarios and a complete adaptation of Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord. It later received an independently released campaign scenario, Trevor's Campaign, as well as 3 additional supplements, and finally a reprint of the original rulebook set in 2005. This is based on the 1988 book. He notes that there are some peculiarities here and there, such as inconsistencies with names. When the writer's intent has been obvious with minor things like using the wrong place name, I have changed them. Not made any attempts to imprint my own interpretation upon ambiguous rules, so I have translated with a mind to keep things badly worded in Japanese, badly worded in English too. That said, I would like to clarify some of those now so you know they have been introduced into the text by a clumsy translator. The writer didn't seem sure if Midori was a mage or priest, and she seems to jump back and forth between the two in the Wizardry journals. Regarding 6.1, you'll see that a randomly encountered enemy level 10 fighter can be expected to have 2 AC before he even puts his armor on due to the -8 modifier, and will have better AC than a Malefic once fully kitted out. This is ambiguously what the rules say. The rules in 3.3 say what I have termed shooting attacks get their accuracy from agility, not strength, and allow a thief using them to double their critical rate. Note that this unambiguously only applies to bow and arrow variants. This means things like slings, throwing daggers, and such do not gain any benefit from agility, as they would from dexterity in D&D, and are based, I presume, on strength, since the description for strength increasing accuracy doesn't specify if it only applies to melee weapons. Speaking of items, one presumes the shuriken on the unique magic weapons list is a ranged weapon, but that is not stated in the book. In the Bride of the Black Crystal scenario, the story revolves around a full moon, but there seem to be 2 full moons happening separately, yet less than a week apart, one when the werewolf attacks and one on the night of the vampire ritual. Make of that what you will. And they say that the next thing that they have planned is translating the Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord scenario. And that is the Wizardry RPG. So, I will say this. I don't think this is something that I would run at my table personally. Not without some significant house ruling. There are some old habits that were the fucking style at the time that just don't sit with me. But
I'd be willing to kind of let some of that slide because, again, they're doing an adaptation of Wizardry, which was one of the earlier times of trying to take a tabletop game and make a video game out of those kind of ideas. I know you can go farther back. I think Dungeon may have been the first one.
The first one was D&D on the Plato's engine. And that wasn't
Dungeon before that? Dungeon wasn't like an officially released project. It was kind of like a guy in his college dorm, if I remember right. I don't say this with great confidence, though.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, when I try and find it, I can't. It gives me a bunch of false positives. But the earliest one was just called D&D in the late 1970s, and it was on the Plato engine. I understand why a lot of people don't know about it because Plato was not widely distributed. But Plato came out in 1975.
And Dungeon was either 75 or 76.
And
so very close together. Quite possibly Plato was first.
Yeah.
But yeah, point in case though, when they turn around and made a tabletop rendition of this, or of Wizardry, I'm not surprised they kind of tried to stick to a lot of those old ideas, because that was the basis of Wizardry.
Yep.
So I will forgive a lot of that, but I'm kind of with you. I don't think I'd actually try to run this one.
I think the one element that just strikes me as the most strange is this is a D100 based system using 2D20. Jinx.
They had to have had D10s. If you had a D20, that's the part that throws me off.
Mm-hmm.
Who had D20s without D10s back then? Wasn't that just part of this dice set you were getting?
Yeah, especially since the 10's part of a D20 you're going to be ignoring. Oh.
Was there something going on in Japan that made D20s that much more prevalent?
Probably not, because a lot of homegrown TTRPGs that I've discovered in my time since utilize D6s for availability's sake, and I can't even use that because the D20 that would be in this is part of a box set. Like the dice are in the damn box. So it's a case of why.
No.
But
it was a very silly choice.
I think I'm not blaming the translator on this, but the way things are structured is definitely in that vein of a collection of subsystems kind of thinking. Though this isn't
Yeah.
nearly as bad as even basic D&D was. I have to
It
compare.
definitely could use some better formatting and organization.
Yeah, and
I
that's
think that'd
looking
make
at it with
flow
modern
much
eyes.
Smoother.
Uh,
Yeah.
so we do have to take that into account.
Yeah.
Like if by some miracle I was running this, I would spend a bit of time doing some text cleanup so that people can get a quick reference as far as what they're supposed to be rolling at given moments.
At the very least, this is an interesting look at some old school gaming from back in the day in Japan.
And I know I have taken the piss out of a lot of old school mindsets and a lot of grognardism, but that I am not willing to go back and run White Box or Beck Me anytime soon. This, on the other hand, I'd be a little bit more willing to run. Having the fighting sheet like that, which there's two versions of. There's a 5x7 version and a 10x10 version, which is 2 pages. You print that out and use a few coins with people's names on them. You could do a pretty beer and pretzels game just off of that. I do like the whole letter thing as far as where to put parts in. That's very nice for first timers. The full character sheet has a way to track each individual number of charges for spells. There are slightly more pre-spells than there are mage spells. But in addition to that, as far as the descending AC thing, it doesn't bug me as much as the way Thaco was presented. And I think it's because everything in this is built around percentile. Well, except for damage dice, but everything outside of damage dice is built around a percentile roll. That is going to make it a lot easier to grasp AC.
Other than that, I don't think I really have much more thoughts on this. Again, interesting system.
Yeah.
If someone happened to bust it out, I don't think I'd want to run it myself, but I'd play a game.
At the very least, it will inflict less pain than the video games can. Mostly. That fucking level train. But that is going to wrap it up for this particular episode of The Valley of the Judged. We will be back in here next week as we cover the coming-of-age dark fantasy RPG coming from Horrible Guild, known as Vileborn. So keep an eye out for that. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.